Steve?
Coach, it's been a while since we've been together, but how would you kind of assess maybe your confidence level in your team this year compared to the beginning of last year?
I don't know. I was pretty confident last year too, but I'm pretty confident in this group. We've had a good spring training. We've had a good fall. I think we got some nice pieces. We still need to see some guys, in between the lines on game day in the uni do it, but I like our group a lot.
Robbie?
I remember last year I'd asked you about your starting rotation, your confidence level in them, and you had named off so many guys that you felt like even going into that game week could be starting pitchers. Is it the same thing this year? A lot of guys in the mix, or have you kind of narrowed it down a little bit?
No, there's actually we actually have a lot of guys in the mix that could start. A lot of our talent on the mound is young. They probably haven't been out there on the dude yet. So, maybe handing it to some of the older guys that are out there. But I think there's a good mix, right now. But I do think some of the younger guys could really fight for some starting roles down the road.
Have you decided on a rotation yet?
Yeah, we put it out just a little while ago. It's a Pico, Carson, and Stone for the weekend.
Sam?
Yeah, kind of similar to Steve's first question, but you've talked about how the goal for the season is Omaha and getting back to the College World Series and all that. What about this group just gives you confidence that this could be the year that happens?
Just watching them all year, seeing who they are, the age. We're an older team. A lot of our talent's young, but a lot of it, like older kids on the ball club. I feel like we'll pitch at a pretty high level, knock on wood. And I think we can do some pretty special things in the lineup. So, we play in the toughest league in the country against the best teams in the country. So it's a lot about your talent level, but it's also about your culture, your team, and the toughness that you play with. There's probably 10 games there in the middle that you've got out and you fight for, and that's what you got to find out about your team a little bit. And we don't know that right now. Nobody does.
Steve?
One of the things you're talking to former players, they talked about how great the 21 team was. It's because you had talent, but you also had great leadership and accountability. I don't know if it's always been the case, but with this group, how would you kind of assess those attributes as far as, maybe accountability among themselves where the coaches don't have to get involved?
Yeah, I think it's just hard to tell because you don't go through a lot of adversity yet. You find out about your team in the moments in the tough moments, unfortunately. When you lose to Missouri and probably kill your chances of winning the SEC, right? Or you lose to in Hoover and you're driving home and you got to get ready for a regional. I mean, that's when you find out that character piece of your team. I like the group. They're good kids. They seem to like each other. There's some tough kids in there, some kids that are evolving into leadership roles. The talent level's there. I mean, I think we're very talented, but finding out about who we are, that's what we're going to find out at 4 o'clock on Friday.
Benjamin?
Last year you had a couple guys who Coach Parker seemed to work his magic with, like Tyson Harden, Tyler Davis became huge pieces in the back end of your bullpen. Who do you see sort of filling those roles this year, who maybe haven't put up great numbers in the past but are primed to take big leaps forward here?
Man, we got a whole group of them. If you come to any of our scrimmages, some of those guys in that bullpen really have a chance to do some special things. I mean, Mekhi Grant's a guy that's back that's really doing some special things. Dane Burns is a young kid that we have that's doing some special things. Nate Williams is a kid who's been on the shelf for 2 years and is starting to work his way back into the fold. And I could probably list about 7 or 8 of them that are really making some jumps. And I think Park's done a great job with those guys.
Steve?
One of the things we talked about, the game is the game, but the game here sometimes can be a little different because of the expectations and the fans. But how do you prepare these newcomers to go out there and play in front of what they're going to see this weekend?
Yeah, in this day and age, you have so many newcomers. If we went around and said, hey, how many new guys are playing at the dude, it's a lot, and so, just throw them in, throw them into the water, I guess is the best way. I mean, we talk about it a little bit, but you got to go out there and play. And the good thing is it is a lot of older kids, a lot of kids who played. And I don't know if USC Upstate played in this environment or Campbell or some of the schools that our kids came from, but there's an adjustment period for those guys too.
Robbie?
You mentioned you're going with Stone this weekend. I mean, this has been such a long journey for him, and I know he showed some really good things this summer. What's your confidence level in him physically and mentally getting back out there and in that role too as a starter?
Yeah, I'm real confident in both. You know, he's probably a little limited. He's probably a week behind everybody else. So, just building up his volume right now is the most important thing for us. Trying to get him to the right volume and not push him too hard too early. So you'll see us handle him probably a little different than some of the other starters. But he's so efficient. You know, probably the most efficient pitcher we have. That he can run out there and give you some real quick innings.
Steve?
It feels like the last couple of
Hey,
weeks.
are you just letting the same two guys ask questions or no? I'm just joking. So I feel like it's the same too. So
It feels like the last couple of weeks the infield is kind of settled. Outfield seems to be kind of a work in progress. How would you kind of assess that, and how do you plan to approach that these first few weeks?
Yeah, I think the infield still has some pieces that are playing out too. There's a lot of competition in there. Some of the guys, obviously we know, some of the guys, but I still think there's some work in there. But the outfield, I probably have more switches in the outfield. I think you have some guys that have started to play well. The Aaron Downs, Reed Stallman, Ethan Pulliam piece. I think Ross Highfield I got to figure out how to keep him in the lineup on the days he doesn't catch. So he may run out there and play some outfield. Bryce Chance and Mikey O'Brien out there. You got some different pieces, so some different things you can do. So I think that's where you'll see most of our shifting and moving. But some of those guys have had really good spring trainings.
Sam?
Have you just gotten a look at Manhattan and what kind of team they are?
Have not. I know they've had. I know that sounds crazy. We started scouting today, but they have had they've had a big transition. We signed them up to play here probably 2 or 3 years ago, and then they lose a coach last summer, and they've kind of transitioned their program. So there's not a lot of kids that we've seen before. So we will start to look into them and break them down. We've just been so focused on us at this point, on us coach speak, but we just don't know a lot about them right now. And I don't know if we'll know as much as a normal opponent about them.
Jacob?
Coach, you have a lot of offensive depth. Just talk about the battle going on right now at DH.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I'm just trying to get guys position flex because Noah Sullivan's, probably DH right now, been really good for us all fall, been good for us, this spring training, had 3 really good years coming in. So, that's the hardest part for me probably is getting some guys in that mold. Obviously the guys that aren't playing in the outfield are the extra catchers. Jackson Owens, a guy that had a really good fall, offensively. So trying to get some guys some extra at bats.
Steve?
Joe Powell has had really good spring training for you from our vantage point. How much flexibility does that give you with Ross when you've got a guy, Joe, that's been in your program for a year but appears to be playing his best baseball in running away?
Yeah, really good. I mean, I thought his spring training was great. He missed most of the fall, with a minor injury, but he has been really good this spring training. Pretty good defensive catcher, a great thrower. Ross needs that flexibility. Ross can't catch every day, and Joe's probably played as well as Ross back there, just day to day. Ross just has the ability to do some really special things at times, but I think you'll see Joe, fall into a nice spot like he did last year and figure out, we met this morning, who should he catch? What pitcher on the staff does he match up the best with? And so trying to make sure that we don't wear down our catchers.
Robbie?
Mikey had a big hit on that center field wall in the scrimmage the other day. What's his health like? And also Ross, I think he got hit by a pitch on Friday or Saturday too.
Ross is fine. Ross missed yesterday with the sick. So I think Mikey's fine. I really do. Like, he was in the dugout all day yesterday. It was just kind of precautionary. I think he meets with the docs today, and he's been texting me all morning how good he is. So he still has to see the doc. So, but I think they're both fine.
Danny P?
Coach Pico came back late in the year, gave you some good innings toward the late. What kind of strides has he made in the offseason to get that number 1 nod at the start?
Well, when you go back to that Virginia game, and he's 92, 94, and arguably one of the best offensive lineups in college baseball after we'd sat in the dugout for 8 hours on that day and pitched the way he did. That's what you were hoping when you got back, and he's kind of been back in that form this spring training. So he came back for a reason. He wanted to get better. He felt like he had areas to get better. I think he's the heaviest he's been in his career. I think he's mechanically the strongest he's been in his career. So I'm excited for him. I think he has an exciting season ahead of him.
Steve?
Defensively, you guys one of the better teams in the country last year. And how would you kind of assess where you are defensively right now and maybe where do you want to be?
Yeah, I think we're still a work in progress. I like us defensively. It just depends on who I have out there, and you may see us in the 8th inning with a lead put in a defensive lineup. I think you can see that happen a little bit too. But we're still working defensively. We got some guys that I think we're, with Ross and Joe back there, you got 2 really good defensive catchers. I think our center fielders and our middle infielders, you're looking at a really strong core there through the middle of the field, which is where you try to build it. The question becomes, as you start trying to get bats in the lineup, what are you sacrificing defensively? I think that's a big conversation for us because we got some pretty good, options in our bats. But I don't want to take away from the defense either.
Joel?
You talked about Carson being on the mound on Saturday, and just I know he came in last year, obviously, and you really liked him. But what have you seen from him to take the strides necessary to be in that weekend rotation?
Well, he's a totally different pitcher, fundamentally, just mechanically. And I think that's the biggest thing you've seen. This time last year, I don't even know if he was throwing. Just a little banged up. The mechanics were off. He's done a great job with Park working to get back. And he's still got some work to do. I think he'll tell you that, but you're getting a 22-year-old guy who's pitched in a lot of big-time college baseball games and atmospheres. It's real plus stuff. Can he harness it? I think that's the biggest thing. It's a little bit more command. He's not wild. He'll throw it down the middle instead of to the corners or whatever. And I think those are the pieces that you're trying to get out of.